Welcome to the third video in our series, Understanding Inflation and Escalation and Defense Acquisition, a guide for better public understanding. Today, we will present an overview on how the Department of Defense utilizes inflation to support the development of certain cost figures and cost estimates. Let's begin. Recall the definition of inflation from video 1. Inflation is a price change measured by the increase in the average price level of all goods and services transacted in an economy. But there's another definition too. Inflation also measures the change in the purchasing power or value of the dollar relative to an economy-wide basket of goods and services. If one were to take the average of escalation rates over all goods and services in an economy, one could derive inflation. But unlike escalation, inflation cannot be observed. Inflation occurs when the prices of most goods and services in an economy increase over a period of time. If the opposite happens, if the prices in an economy fall and the purchasing power of the dollar increases, then this is called deflation. Additionally, inflation attempts to measure the change in the purchasing power of the dollar. Purchasing power is how much stuff you can buy with your money. Let's say that in 1 year you can purchase a basket of goods and services with a set amount of money. But in the second year, you cannot afford the same basket of goods and services that you purchased last year with the same amount of money. This is a result of inflation, or the decrease in the purchasing power of the dollar. Remember that purchasing power is how much stuff you can buy with money at a given time. Inflation occurs when the purchasing power of the dollar decreases, and deflation is when the purchasing power of the dollar increases. Inflation's effects are relevant to all goods and services, like computers, TVs, apples, and sports tickets, because the dollar is used on one side of all transactions. This also includes defense acquisition programs, such as a bomber platform. Like escalation, inflation is not influenced by individual programmatic decisions, but unlike escalation, all programs are affected by inflation in the same proportion. Inflation cannot explain the changes in price of a specific good or service. As discussed, that is the role of escalation. This is because production processes that combine material, labor, and other inputs are often different between programs. Therefore, the cumulative effect of escalation differs from program to program. So why does the Columbia-class program cost $100 billion and $128 billion? As discussed, the $128 billion is a realistic cost estimate based on the observable price changes described by escalation. The $100 billion estimate takes the exact same $128 billion estimate but removes the effects of inflation over the program's acquisition period. In the case of the Columbia-class program, the $28 billion difference reflects the change in the purchasing power of the dollar caused by inflation over the program's estimated acquisition period. Now, let's dive deeper. Let's suppose we have a submarine program where we buy 10 submarines over 10 years. We know that the price of building a submarine in the first year of a program is $1 billion. So, if there were no price changes due to the effects of escalation or inflation, the cumulative cost to build 10 submarines over 10 years would be $10 billion. But how much would the program actually cost? Recall that the actual prices of each component of the submarine can change over time because of escalation. Some of these components can range from material, tooling, and even labor. Let's assume that this escalation rate is faster than the average price change in an economy as a whole, or inflation. In effect, the cost of the program is greater than $10 billion because of escalation. However, we can't forget that one part of escalation is inflation. Let's assume that over the duration of this program, inflation was at 2%. This means that each year the purchasing power of the dollar fell 2%, effectively making the cost of all components in the submarine 2% more expensive. Therefore, the cost of inflation was an additional $2 billion over 10 years. But as you can see, the cost of escalation is actually greater than the $2 billion because in this example, escalation outpaced inflation. Let's examine how the Breaking Defense article interpreted the $100 billion figure from the Columbia-class cost estimate. The program would cost $100 billion if you could somehow buy all of it today, paying 2017 prices. It costs $128 billion once you factor in future inflation. Remember how we discussed that there are two components of escalation? The $100 billion figure does not represent what the Columbia-class program would cost if it could be purchased entirely in 2017, because the $100 billion figure still contains the effects of real price change, or the amount of escalation that cannot be explained by inflation. In fact, if you could somehow buy the entire Columbia-class program in 2017 dollars, the program would actually cost less than $100 billion. If this is confusing, don't worry. We can explain it in further detail with our previous example. Notice that the estimated final cost of the program is $14 billion when you factor in escalation. When you remove the effects of inflation, the cost is now $12 billion. However, the original $14 billion figure contained more than just inflation. The $14 billion figure also includes the cost of the second component of escalation, real price change. If we were to remove the cost of real price change, which is essentially removing the total cost of escalation, the total cost is now once again $10 billion. As you can see from above, we could buy all 10 submarines in a single year for $10 billion. Notice how this is the same as the base cost of the program. Thank you for watching. This concludes video 3 in our series, Understanding Inflation and Escalation in Defense Acquisition, a guide for better public understanding. For more information or additional resources on how inflation and escalation are used in defense acquisition, please visit our website at cade.osd.mil/policy/inflation.